Good morning, everyone. We are glad that you're here and checking in. As I mentioned in the chat earlier, and I'll do so in a minute, if you've not hopped over to the event page to download the slides or resources, please feel free to do that. And again, in a moment, I'll put that link in the chat in case you missed it the first time. But good morning again. My name is Robin DiPietro Wells, and I'm a program coordinator for OneOp. It's my pleasure to welcome you to today's session on, today's session, Tiny Hearts, Big Emotions, Nurturing Emotional Intelligence in the Early Years. In case you're joining us for the first time, I'd like to give you a brief tour of our webinar platform so you can find your way around. Hopefully, you are currently able to view the slides that we're sharing. If you're unable to see them or have any other difficulties, please email us at contact@oneop.org for tech support. As some of you already have done, we look forward to having you join us in the chat pod for conversations and questions. To embed the chat pod so you don't miss any links or conversation, simply place your cursor over the shared slides. You will then see a toolbar pop up across the bottom of your screen. From there, just click the chat bubble icon. When typing questions or chat, please be sure to select everyone from the response options drop-down menu so that everyone is able to view them in the chat pod. Note that the slides and resources, as I mentioned, are available for download on the event page, and we will be covering continuing education information at the end of the webinar, so please stay tuned if you're interested in continuing education credits or a certificate of attendance. Thank you again for joining us as we continue our partnership with the Department of Defense and the U.S. Department of Agriculture to expand readiness, knowledge, and networks of the professionals supporting our military service members and their families. Today, we have Dr. LaShourge Schaefer with us. Dr. Schaefer has worked in early childhood and early childhood special education for over 20 years. She earned her doctorate in special ed from the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign. Currently, Dr. Schaefer is an associate professor in early childhood special education at the University of Michigan Dearborn in the Department of Education, joining the faculty in 2011. Before I turn things over to Dr. Schaefer, you may want to, again, make sure you have a copy of the slides, and I will place directions to that end in the chat in a moment. At this time, I will mute my mic so that Dr. Schaefer can begin.
Thank you, Robin, and thank you everyone for being here today. Thank you for sharing your time with me as you continue to develop your skills to enhance the emotional intelligence of the young children you work with. As shared, my name is LaShourge Schaefer, and I am very happy to be here with you. Today, we'll focus on strategies that will increase the emotional intelligence of young children by understanding the connections between culture, temperament, attachment, and relationships. Our objectives, as stated here, are to identify temperament styles and how temperament affects attachment and relationships with adults, describing the role that relationships play in self-regulation and the formation of identity, distinguishing between the cultural differences and how emotional expressions are used for communication, and identifying promotion, prevention, and intervention strategies to promote emotional learning and development. Before we started, I wanted to share a little bit about myself to help position where I connect with this work. First, I want to share that I am a retired military wife of 33 and a half years of service with my husband in the Army. My husband retired this year on January 31st, so we are getting used to being home together. We have two amazing adult children that we are extremely proud of and are doing our best to support their endeavors in life. I have three younger siblings and a host of nieces, nephews, and a goddaughter. I spend majority of my time serving, as Robin indicated, as an associate professor at the University of Michigan Dearborn. I teach undergraduate and graduate students majoring in early intervention, early childhood, and early childhood special education. I spend my spare time with traveling. I love to travel. And with traveling, of course, comes a bit of shopping as well. So, as many of you know, the military lifestyle is not quite the same as civilian life and can be taxing on families. And so, I hope these tools will guide your work with young children and support their development overall and support their connections that they have with their families. So let's get started with a short video on temperament from 0 to 3.
Did you ever wonder how two kids with the same parents can be so different? How about why some children are so easygoing and others, well, are simply more challenging? One major factor is temperament. Temperament shapes the way we experience the world and interact with others. It is the collection of characteristics that makes each of us unique. Temperament is biologically based, the result of our own unique wiring in the brain and nervous system. So your child did not choose his temperament, and it's not the result of something you did or didn't do. Temperament is the reason why some of us love a crowd and others prefer a cup of coffee in a quiet place with a friend. Thinking about your child's temperament can help you tune into the meaning of his behavior and why he acts the way he does. Take, for example, your child's emotional intensity. Is he a big reactor who may squeal with delight when happy, but then have a knockdown, drag-out tantrum in reaction to a seemingly small problem? Or is he a more easygoing, go-with-the-flow kind of guy? What about your child's sensory reactivity, how she responds to sensory experiences? Does she thrive on lots of stimulation, lights, sounds, action? Or does she get overwhelmed easily by these kinds of sensations? Activity level is another important trait to tune into. Does your child always want to be moving and on the go? Or does he prefer quiet, less active play? Then there is adaptability. Does your child easily adapt to new experiences, such as new friends or new places? Or is he slower to warm up, needing time and support to feel comfortable? Finally, we have persistence. Does your child show patience to work through a challenging task, like rethinking her plan to make the boxes fit together? Or is he more likely to get frustrated and give up easily? Temperament may explain why two children can react quite differently even in the same situation. They feel and experience things differently due to their temperaments. What is important to remember is that every child is doing his or her best. They aren't trying to be challenging. Children who are easily overwhelmed by the world really do feel overwhelmed. And when they feel overwhelmed inside, they act overwhelmed on the outside. During these times, your child needs you more than ever. So why is tuning into your child's temperament so important? Because understanding the meaning of your child's behavior helps you respond in ways that are sensitive and that foster her healthy development. So being flexible is important. This means that you keep your child's temperament in mind when you make parenting decisions. For example, if your child is very active, you might take her outside to run around before having to go to the doctor's office where she will have to wait. Last but not least, remember, the goal is not to change your child, but to help her adapt and help her thrive. Letting your child know that you accept him for who he is helps him develop good self-esteem. How you parent really matters. Whatever your child's temperament, whether your child is easygoing or more intense and challenging, your thoughtful responses help your child build new skills and experience more joy in the world. And that's what being a mom or dad is all about.
So, as mentioned in the video, temperament is something that we are all born with. We all have a certain temperament, and it stays fairly constant over time. It's important that we share this information with families and reiterate that their child's behavior is a response to how they are trying to adjust to the world around them. When we understand a child's temperament, we have a better understanding of their behavior and are able to respond in a sensitive manner that fosters healthy development. So remember, temperament is something that is biologically based. It stays fairly consistent over time, and it affects a child's reactions to other people and their environment. The video we just watched mentioned that there are several temperament traits that may present themselves. Some of these traits you may have heard of before, such as feisty, slow to warm up, or shy, fearful, easy, or flexible. You may have been described as having one of these traits yourself. The temperament traits of young children help us identify strengths and the supports needed to develop positive relationships and explore their environments. So let's sort these temperament traits into three broad categories. There's flexible, fearful, and feisty. Here we see the temperament traits sorted by a child's response to the environment. The child who is more flexible may be happy, have regular sleeping and eating schedules. They may adapt to a new environment and people more easily and have a calm to themselves, to their personality, and may not easily be upset. Whereas the child who is fearful or slow to warm may not be as active as the other children. They may be more fussy and not adjust to the new environments quickly. Initially, children who are fearful may be withdrawn, but with time and repeated engagement with caregivers and consistency in their environments and routines, they'll become more adjusted and able to build those positive relationships. Now, the feisty child may be a little bit more fussy. They may have inconsistent sleep and or eating schedules, and they may be more fearful of new people and their environments. They may seem to be upset more easily by loud noises that are around them. They may be startled, and that fear may result in more intense emotions that we will see in them. And so, regardless of the temperament types that we're working with, and I'm sure that we'll come across working with all of them, is that knowing and understanding what those temperament traits really help us to be responsive caregivers. And that's the most important thing. When we talk about these temperament traits, you probably noticed in the video that it came along with some types of um, activity levels or positioning that the kids may have. And so when we look at these different types of temperament traits, they may also show signs of activity levels that may determine the amount of physical movement that that child may need in order to be able to um, stabilize themselves and regulate themselves within their environment. We talked about sleep patterns and eating patterns as well. And so really think about the biological rhythms that children come with. And so and how we help support them in developing that regularity of eating and sleeping and also their bodily movements as well. And then we also have to think about, again, how easily or slowly a child may find their comfort when they're in a new situation, in new environments, around new people. Even sometimes when we are introducing new materials and activities in our environments, they may be more observant and reserved before engaging quickly and heavily as other children might. Also, we need to think about the mood of each child and the amount of time that they may be pleasant, the amount of time that they are cheerful. Those moods can change, right? At certain times and sometimes quickly, as we saw in the video. And being able to look at those change in moods and how those moods also continue on in the amount of time they continue on, not for kids who are just pleasant and cheerful, but those who are crying more often, those who resist being held by caregivers and adults, those who are more fussy. How long of a time do those moods continue on? We also want to think about the intensity of the reaction of the child. How much, what is their energy level, right, of the emotional expressions that they are displaying to us, and how intense is that emotional expression, and how can we appropriately respond to that? Looking at their sensitivity to the environment around them. How do they respond to the lighting that's in our environments? Again, the sounds, textures, smells, taste. And so really being able to gauge where their sensory intake level is going to be really important. So we can make sure that the way we introduce different sensory stimuli to them really match that level of sensitivity. And so being able to gradually support that development of sensory stimuli is going to be important. Also, really thinking about the adaptability of that child. Again, being able to adjust to different changes in our routine, and how quickly they're able to recover from being upset. And so that's one of the things we think about when we're thinking about our schedules, and how is that going to impact our routine, and how is that going to impact that child based on that temperament. Next, we have distractibility. How easily is that child distracted? How easily are they able to maintain their attention to a task, or to an individual that's interacting with them is something important. And finally, we have persistence. How long will that child be able to stay with a difficult activity before giving up? And that is something that we look at early on in infancy to really think about how we are going to continue to build and support that child as they continue to grow when they're in our care. So that's quite a bit for us to take in about temperament, but it's so important for us to really understand temperament and the different temperament traits that we see with young children, because it impacts our relationship with them, and thus impacts how we develop and how children develop that attachment with us as caregivers. And so overall, the temperament trait that a young child has can and will influence the relationship they have with their caregiver. And so it's important that we understand temperament traits again. And also it's important that we share our knowledge of temperament traits that we've observed in children with their family members as well, and making sure we're supporting that relationship at home, as well as the relationships that we have with them when they're in our programs. And so this visual that we have on the screen right now really tries to show the cycle of how children develop their security and attachment during this age span of birth to 3. We have interest in the center of this diagram, security and attachment, and surrounding it, we have how the caregiver is meeting the need of the child. We have relaxation of the caregiver and the child, what arouses that child, and that arousal can be what's happening in the environment. It can be the interaction and engagement they're having with their caregiver. It also is really thinking about, what other maybe internal things that are happening for that child if they're hungry, right? That can be something that arouses them. And then we see that child expressing their need in whatever form it is that they are expressing that is. And so it's important that caregivers and families really understand our own temperament, and to better understand the child's temperament. And again, how to support the emotional development of the child. This creates that positive, safe, trusting relationship with the child and builds a strong attachment. So when infants and young children are in our care, the experiences that they have with the world around them are really vital to creating those opportunities to build positive bonds with their caregivers. And so it's so important for us to really think about how we can influence, right, their overall emotional development because we create those opportunities, we create those experiences that young children are interacting with. And so we are their world that's around them. And so, really thinking about how we are influencing that social and emotional development through the experience and the opportunities that we are providing. Another area that we have to think about within our environments that we are creating is the opportunities for socializations. Our social interactions that we have are happening each and every moment that we are engaging with that infant. It happens each and every moment when we're having conversations with their parents during pickup and during drop off, the interactions that we're having with our colleagues, because during that time, our infants and young toddlers, they're observing us, right? They're watching, they're listening, and they're really trying to understand, you know, what does it mean to have an interaction and a relationship with another person? And so those moment to moment initiations that we have with them and with others that are in our environment really helps them to understand, what social interactions are and the appropriate responses to have when they are engaging as well, right? And so when we greet an infant with our hellos, with a smile on our face, they are picking up and cueing in to that, those smiles and our voice, our tone, our facial expressions. All those things are social interactions that our infants are really developing and learning about when they are in those situations. Also, the social relationships that we are providing. We show that through the affection that we provide them. We show that through how we care for them, how we're nurturing for them, how we're holding them, when we are meeting their needs, when we're feeding, when we're changing them, right? Providing those reciprocal warm feelings creates opportunities again for them to learn what does it mean to be in a social relationship with another person. They're gathering that information and that knowledge with the social interchanges that we have with them, which also builds their own social confidence, right? Do they understand what it means to have a reciprocal relationship with someone else, right? How am I also really understanding how I make someone else feel within this social interchange that I'm having with them? If I smile, right, as the infant, will the adult smile, right? And so if I babble, right, quote unquote, talking, will that adult talk back to me? And so if we think about creating, these exchanges, again, with infants, we are helping to develop their social competence, right? We're creating their understanding of what it means to have a mutually satisfying social relationship with someone. And so these are the initial opportunities of socialization that we are providing for infants. And so they continue to build upon these socializations that we have with them, in order for them to understand how they will engage in relationships with their family members and with their peers and with adults. So as children are learning about, the social world around them, they are developing different types of attachment with their caregivers. And so we have three different types of attachment types that you probably have heard of from Mary Ainsworth research. And so we have secure attachments in the first square, and then in the middle we have ambivalent. And in the third one, we have avoided. And so let's start with a secure attachment. In the square, it says the child is content, ready to learn and engage with tasks, can be independent, and seek out caregiver for comfort. And so when we think about secure attachments, they really develop when the caregiver is sensitively reading the child's cues for comfort and really being able to respond effectively to those child's needs. And so in order for this type of attachment to develop, again, it's on us as a caregiver to really being able to tune in to the child and really determine what are their needs, right? Because of course we know as infants they're not talking to us yet, but they are communicating with us through crying, right? Through their body language. And so, how are we responding to that? And are we able to help them build that secure attachment? Next, in the middle, we have ambivalent or also called anxious ambivalent, right? And so the child expresses anxiety in their environment. They're often asking questions and can appear distracted or lacking focus. And so when we see this type of attachment, we know that it develops when a caregiver is attending to the young child, but only when it serves their own needs. And so that means the adult's own needs. And so the caregiver may ignore the young child's signals of distress. And that can create that anxiety, right, within the child because they're trying to communicate, right, that there is a need, but it's not being responded to. And so it again often will confuse, maybe, is a word, that child, especially if they have one caregiver who is responsive. And so they're using the same strategies, quote unquote, right, in order to get the attention of a caregiver, but that's not working for them. And so when their needs are not being responded to, then they develop this ambivalent attachment to their caregiver. The next one is the avoidant attachment that we see in the last red square. And it states here that the child often feels rejected. They do not show distress, and they can appear withdrawn and quiet. And so when this is happening, it's when that caregiver is constantly and consistently ignoring that child, or there's an anger that is felt towards the child or that infant much of the time. And so it's much more harder for that infant to build an attachment with a caregiver who has this anger or is ignoring them um, more consistently because they're quite not sure, how they're going to get their needs met. And so when we think about these three type of attachments, we really want to think about how can we create this a secure sense of attachment with the child. So remember that infants develop a secure attachment. They have that sense of safety and security, right? They can trust that their caregivers will be nearby to support them if needed. And so when we have that, okay, and when we see that again, then we know that that child can be content. They can be ready to learn and engage with tasks. And so we want to work towards the secure attachment with the infants that we're working with and young children that are in our care. The next few slides will have a couple of photos that we'll take a look at, And I want you to be ready within your chat and being able to respond and so to these photos. So in the photo here, the first photo, we have a child that's looking upward. Oops, I'm sorry, I skip forward in my notes. Here we have a caregiver with a smile on their face, holding a child closely face to face. So in the chat, please type what the caption for this photo might say. And this will give me an opportunity for me to open up the chat and see what you think about what you think this, what might the caption for this photo say. Is that what you think, Mom? Oh, I love that. We got some people joining. Oh gosh, it's going by really fast. Are you okay? The child looks engaged. I'm not sure about that. Oh, you all type really fast. I am not interested in this, Mom. I feel safe. Put me down. I like that. Mom, can I have a cookie? Really? Um, Happy you are here. We are going to have a good day. Are you sure? What are you doing? Can I go play? I love these. And so if we think about, the interactions that we have, and even kids that may not have developed, their communication skills fully yet, we can imagine, right, what they're saying to us. And so that's really important for us to think about when we have these opportunities when we are with the kids as well. I'm going to read a few more. Can I go play? You make me happy. I love you. Can I go home now? I love you. All right, so let's take a look at the next one. All right. And for in this photo, we have a child looking upward with a concerned look on their face. So again, in the chat, please type what the caption for this photo might say. Well, here we go. What's this? I need you, please. Where's mama? Who are you? I think I've seen that look on a child before, like, who are you? I'm afraid. Stop. Hurry up and take my photo. I think I've seen that one too. Where am I? Do I have to stay? I'm worried. Are you staying there? I'm getting scared. Am I okay? Why? Am I in trouble? I like that one. I'm sad. I'm shy. These are great. These are great. Help me. There we go. Not sure. Is it time to go? Oh, they're lonely. Lots of different thoughts that are coming through. Where's my mom? All right. Okay. All right, we have one more. Right. In this photo, we have a child who's being carried by a caregiver. And so you don't see the caregiver's face, but you do see the child. And for those of you who are on with us right now, you can see those eyes. And so in the chat, please, once again, type what the caption for this photo would say. Oh, I missed you. I'm safe. I love you, Mom. Don't put me down. Relief. Is it okay now? This is my happy place. Don't put me down. Is nap time over? I love you so much. You're finally here. I've had a hard day. Please just hold me. Oh, exhausted. I don't feel comfortable here. Trust, hold me. I missed you. Oh, I'm tired. Again, you all are amazing. You definitely have a knack of reading children's cues, even through a photo. And I'm sure that you also are tuned in to the children that you care for as well. And so really continue to think about, and when you have those observations or just reflecting back on your day that you're having with children, what these moments are, what might that caption be for you and the child that you are caring for? Are you providing these moments, maybe these small moments that have this caption? Are you responsive to what the needs are of that child in that moment? And continuing, to carry that with you as you engage with children individually, right? Because the responses that we have to them will be different because each and every child is different, and so we want to be responsive to those individual needs. I wanted us to have an opportunity to share in the next 3 slides, these charts. And these charts really show that um, it's important that we remember that similar to other developmental areas, social emotional development is on a continuum as well. And thank you, Robin, for putting that note that's in the chat that these are available. The chart shows us possible social emotional indicators across the ages of birth to 15 months. And so, regardless of age, children show signs of attachment and trust, which also can be seen as security, self awareness, which develops into identity, and exploration and autonomy, which leads to independence. And so, it's really interesting to see the signs of temperament here. Also, within the charts, if you look at them, such as acting anxious around strangers or preferring to be held by familiar people, and showing strong feelings such as anger, anxiety, and affection. And so, as we look at this age range of birth to 15 months, we see that social emotional development is occurring immediately at birth. And so it's important for us to really think about how we are supporting and nurturing that development early on. Here we have the age range of 12 months to 2.5 years. Some examples that are presented here, again, across these three categories, are for attachment and trust and security, self-awareness and identity, and exploration, autonomy, and independence. We see that the child may experience periods of intense feelings when separating or reuniting with a parent. You may see a child exploring everything in their environment. Also, oh, the slide did not change. Thank you very much. I caught that one. Oh, now I made them go too fast. Okay, thank you very much. Or the child may have wide mood swings from stubborn to cooperative. And some of these emotions and feelings, they just come. One of the things I vividly remember when my daughter was around this age, she was around 18 months to 24 months. And interesting enough, she would wake up in these like night terrors, and she would cry and cry and cry. And because she was sleeping, I had no idea what to do, right? It's like, okay, she's wouldn't be feeding her at that time or doing things. All I could do was like soothly talk to her and try to hold her calmly. But it happened for several months in the middle of the night. And during the daytime, it was as it was normal day to day. It was like none of these intense, strong emotions. They only came out at night during these. I'm assuming she was dreaming that she was experiencing these intense feelings. So I'm not quite sure what was happening in her dreams, but I'm wondering, as it says here, those experiencing those intense feelings when separating or reuniting with a parent. And so, was that something that was happening during that time that maybe she was dreaming about, and it was being presented, those emotions were being presented in her sleep. And so those are some of the things that we wrestle with and really try to understand with kids um, that we are working with, or our own kids, is really trying to understand the emotions that they present to us and help them to be able to navigate those emotions. On this last slide that we have of this chart, the age ranges is of 2.5 to 3.5 years. And as you can see, children continue to develop socially and emotionally. Children are more aware that others have feelings and even show concern for others during this age range. But with the support from caregivers and family members, young children can develop that security in the relationships they have with their immediate providers. They can develop positive identity and independence. And so during these first, you know, 3 years of life is in such a unique opportunity that we have to help children develop that security and that positive identity and that independence. And so if we think about, whether you are working with our youngest infants and toddlers or our little older ones, right? They're getting ready to enter into those preschool years, that we have a role in this area of development. And it's so important that we think about how this development occurs, right? It doesn't occur in isolation. It occurs along the other areas of development, but it's also a continuum. And so just because a child is 15 months, we don't say that they have to have, completed and or mastered these different areas of social development, but it's it goes, along a journey and helping kids on the journey that they have. And there's other things that happen within the family, or within the child's life, that is going to impact where they are on this developmental continuum. And so it's really important that we provide the support where children are at and help them continue to grow and develop. Our next slide is going to be a video, and it's going to provide some great strategies to support emotional intelligence. And so as you're watching, I want to encourage you to grab a pen and paper and to really jot down the strategies mentioned and really think about one that you may want to implement today or tomorrow, and or think about that one that you're you know not already doing, and you want to give it a try, or maybe there's one that you are doing and it's going to be something that you can reflect upon and really think about how to continue to improve and engage on. And so I'm going to now move to the video. And I'm going to click so you can get started. I'm going to give you a few more seconds. Hopefully you have something to write with, and jot down the strategy that sticks out to you most.
teachers and caregivers make a difference. The following are some strategies that teachers and caregivers might use to promote children's secure attachments. To support the parent-child relationship, help parents feel competent and confident in their parenting. Notice and describe when parents are warm, responsive, and nurturing with their child. Help parents to identify their own strengths as parents and to recognize when they are enjoying time with their child. In most cases, the ultimate goal should always be to strengthen the bond between parents and their children. Provide extra support to parents when needed. Sometimes a child's temperament, illness, behavior, or disability may be challenging for parents and teachers, and they may need extra support to create strong, positive child-family attachment relationships. Use home visits and individual time with the family to provide resources and information to match the unique needs of the family. To foster a secure relationship with the child, be warm, responsive, and affectionate with all children. Caregivers and teachers' affection helps children feel worthwhile and teaches them how to show affection. Reading and responding to cues given by the child is critical, such as smiling or reaching to indicate they want to interact, pulling away or arching their back to indicate they need a break from the interaction, or showing sadness or distress. Engage in meaningful conversational interactions with children. Reciprocity, taking turns in interactions, helps young children feel competent. Be physically and emotionally available when a mobile infant or toddler explores their environment. Mobile infants and toddlers explore their environment and return to their special adults when they need a hug, a pat, or encouragement. Toddlers balance closeness to an adult and exploration. They focus on accomplishing tasks, yet will seek adult help when they need it. Comfort children when they are distressed. Infants and toddlers learn to organize and manage their emotions when adults consistently respond to their communication cues and comfort them when they are distressed. When children feel insecure, stressed, or have experienced trauma, neglect, abuse, or maltreatment, teachers and caregivers need to provide consistent emotional support to help children feel safe and to help them trust adults again. Be an enthusiastic learning partner. When adults are unintrusive, follow a child's lead during play and provide help that supports problem solving, the child's confidence and motivation to learn grows. Share a child's excitement about learning and remember that each moment during the day has the potential for relationship building. Let children know that you will provide safe behavior boundaries, keeping them, their peers, and their things safe. Adults who demonstrate and teach infants and toddlers how to behave in a social way by example, rather than telling children what not to do, are not only keeping children safe, but also teaching them how to behave with others. For example, showing a child how to touch a peer gently instead of simply telling them to stop demonstrates the suitable behavior. Provide small groups, low adult-child ratios, and primary care. An environment that allows for consistency in personnel, substantial time, and adequate space to build one-to-one relationships is a key ingredient in forming strong, healthy attachments between children and adults. Move caregivers and teachers with a group of children together to a new room as children develop. Consistency is critical for infants and toddlers as they transition to new environments. Allowing for a way to let adults move with some of the children to a new environment, from infant care to a toddler classroom, will help children feel secure as they face changes and new challenges in the environment. Develop program policies to refer families who need additional mental health support to the right resources. Families who experience stress need ongoing social support so that they can be warm, responsive, and affectionate with their children. Programs can help by providing families information and access to materials and other resources. Programs can also serve as a bridge between families and services available in their communities.
Well, these are lots of great strategies that, as you can see, will help us transition to our next segment. And so when we think about these strategies, Robin, thanks with the question in the chat, what strategy jumped out to you? thinking about which ones you might try or which ones you would like to improve upon. That's so important that we are thinking about the strategies that may be new to us, but also strategies that we are familiar with, and really thinking about how we can continue to build upon that. And so really thinking about, that and how you're going to continue to grow and move forward. And I love that we're sharing that within the chat as well with each other. And so, an important factor for us to really think about and take into consideration would, of course, be culture. I would be remiss if I not bring our attention to the influence that culture has on development, including emotional development. Children develop in the context of their culture. And so, it's really important for us to think about the cultural differences that each child and family brings to our program and the care that we are providing to them. We have to think about languages. We have to think about different traditions, behaviors, beliefs, values, and interactions and other contexts that we have to think about and gain insight and information from families as we're supporting children and how they develop. An important factor for us to take into consideration is independence and interdependence. And so these cultural familial contexts must be considered when we are supporting children's development. When children are raised within families from an individualist culture, there is more emphasis on independence. And as you see here, these three bullets underneath, that children are encouraged to do things on their own. They really must understand themselves as a possessor before learning to share. And then they are encouraged to share. And so you can see this from that independence or individualist culture. Whereas children who are raised within a collectivist culture, there is more emphasis on interdependence. And children are encouraged to rely on others. They are encouraged and really is stressed at birth to share. And then, sharing within this familial cultural context is not a choice. Sharing is a priority. And so ownership is not emphasized as it is within that independence culture and independent culture. And so really thinking about, what is the family context that we are working with, and really working alongside with families with helping support their child's growth and development within the context of the family culture. The relationship that children have with us as adults and the other adults in their lives is really going to impact the development of their self-regulation. And so if we think about relationships, we have to also think about how that is impacting self-regulation. When we know, as we talked before, when caregivers are in tune to the temperament of infants and toddlers, they are really able to support the development of self-regulation. When caregivers are responsive to the needs of the child and they match their care to the temperament of the child, it creates a more meaningful and positive experience for the child themselves. And so we have a really, really short video right here, about 1 minute, that will really give us a look at how this adult is balancing and co-regulating to match the child's needs.
Can you open the rest? Can you do that?
Good.
Yeah.
Yay.
Good job. Here, can you open it like that? I think you got it. Almost. Almost. Here, keep trying. Here, ready? Can I help you? Can Mama help? Okay.
Okay.
Okay. Almost, almost. Do you want Mama help? Yay. Here, I'll hold this. Okay, go ahead. Got it? Almost, almost. Almost. Here. Got it? Yay!
And so as you can see in this video that the parent is really, there providing that support, knowing, letting the child know that she's there, asking for help, right? If the child needs help, if mama can help, but really trying to balance, right, that support based on where that child is at. She's providing opportunities for that child to be able to um share where she's at and if she needs help, and so not correcting, right, the self-talk that the child is presenting, but balancing, right, again balancing her temperament to that child's and really matching that in a phenomenal way. Oops. The first 3 years of life really set that stage for emotional learning and development. And it all happens in relationships with adults. The relationships that children have with adults guides the way the child understands how people are with each other. And so when an infant feels safe, when they feel understood and cared for with a specific adult, they're able to develop, again, that positive relationships, not just with adults, but with peers as well. And so it's important that we remember that infants and toddlers learn through their observations and their interactions with adults. They learn how to behave and how to respond based on those observations and those interactions. Behavioral styles that we'll and interact with, they're going to vary by culture. Some cultures value children who are quiet and obedient, whereas there are other cultures that value those kiddos who are very feisty and assertive. And so the emotional expressions of young children may develop more quickly and more heartily in some children, and then less quickly and less heartily in other children, based on the cultural dynamics of the families and adult interactions that they are socialized in. Children's attachment is in response, again, to the adult's response and actions in comforting them, and that can vary by culture. It's important to have frequent and ongoing communication with families to understand how their views on social interactions and developing relationships with peers is perceived for them. At all times, we should respect the family's goals for their child. We should be reflecting on how we can meet the child's needs, interests, and strengths based on their temperament, and determine how to relate to the child in a responsive way. Um, when we are working with children, it's really remembering for us, it's important for us to remember that they are growing within the context of their family. And so they bring that cultural, familial context to us and to our programs. And in order for us to be able to understand that, it's important for us to have that open and ongoing communication with families. Um, Here we know that infants and toddlers communicate through their emotions. They are learning through, again, their interactions with peers and their adults. The social interactions they present are developing social emotional skills. As you can see here, those includes giving, right? They may give and they may share with us. They may defend, right? Their quote unquote their property, their toys, their stuffed animals. They may offer things to their peers and to us. You may begin to see signs of showing empathy, They may begin to choose their familiar playmates, even in infancy. Young infants will see that that they may crawl over to other infants that they enjoy being next to. And as they grow older, kids are developing those relationships and those friendships, and we should be there to be able to support them through that process. When infants are in distress, adults should support them in self-regulating, again, by providing them soothing solutions, as we see here, whether it is sucking on a pacifier, swaddling, especially infants tightly, or holding them, rocking them, singing to them. How to support those self-regulation in infants is going to be important for us to really think about. Again, talking with families about what it is that they do at home as well to support that self-regulation in infants. And in the context of all of this, we have to think back to that social emotional continuum chart that we saw earlier. Self-awareness or identity begins at birth, when the infant goes from accidentally sucking on their own hands to carefully watching others and watching how they're responding to the environment around them. When they imitate adult behaviors, right? When they know they can make things happen, but not quite sure about that. We see that when kids have that back and forth play with us. May see early toddlers or infants drop something on the floor to see if the adult is going to respond and pick it up. Then they'll drop it again to see if we'll pick it up, right? And so, can they make things happen? They are growing and developing that identity when they know a lot about communicating in their own style in their own cultural style, right? They're learning that communication technique from home, and then they're building upon that and when they're in our care. And so if we think about the development of identity, we want to really think about that continuum again and how their social emotional development lends itself to the development of identity. Um, Next, we have some ways to promote that early learning and development. You may recall in January, a colleague of mine that you had, Tweety Yates, provided you with tons of resources for you to support your practice. Um, there's I believe, a resource that is being provided to you back to those resources that she provided. But remember, as it said in the video, as caregivers, we promote social emotional pro-social behaviors by providing continuity in the group care that we provide. Are we creating time together in an environment that's enriching? We can promote emotional learning and development by creating environments that support this area of development specifically. We support those positive social behaviors by having those positive interactions with our infants and toddlers. We are creating pro-social interactions with children by our behavior. We're modeling pro-social behavior. We're emphasizing how giving and helping them and helping the other children in our care makes people feel good. And so if they're observing that again, and they're listening to us and how we are caring for them and to other children around them, we are promoting those pro-social behaviors through what we do. We also have, opportunities to create enriching environments. Our interactions, again, with our infants and toddlers, they can be both verbal and nonverbal. And so how we look at them, our smiles, our facial expressions, children are taking that information in. Are we asking children what they like to do, what they like to eat? Are we responding and describing their reactions, their emotional state to them? Are we making sure that we're mindful of their activity level, right? We talked about that temperament traits, and are we being responsive to that? That ties in into the environments that we create, the opportunities that we create, that looks at our schedules, right? That we have, the routines that we have, the activities that we have. That is what helps to create that positive and that enriching environment in what we do and the opportunities we provide. And next, we have to think about, again, the opportunities. Are we placing infants near other infants? Are we providing multiple and duplicate toys so kids don't have to fight over one toy? Are we giving children with disabilities that are in our care toys that are really going to draw other kids towards them? So we're creating that social opportunity, right? We talked about that socialization again. We create those opportunities. We create opportunities for children with disabilities who need that support with communicating with their peers, those opportunities for engagement and communication. Again, are we being just descriptive on our comments and how we see children engaging in activities and behaviors that we like to see? So continuing to help children and encouraging them in their social emotional development is so important. When creating a safe, warm, supportive learning environments, we know that we can promote positive emotional development and learning. And as Robin has queued up for you, if you have any questions, please place them in the chat. Emotional intelligence and development occurs when the regulations of one's reactions to the environment is learned. That ability to express and understand one's emotions is learned. The development of a positive, attached relationship with a caring adult occurs when we provide those opportunities, and it develops that sense of self and identity.
Thanks, LaShorage. As Dr. Schaefer just mentioned, if you've got questions, we'd love to hear from you in the chat. There were a couple things as we give people a minute to kind of put their questions in the chat if they've had any. There's a couple things that caught my mind as I was listening, and one I think has to do with temperament. And I think that those of us who have ever cared for a child in any capacity can understand the struggle when you're caring for a child whose temperament is very, very different than yours, right? Um, so, how could professionals help families, say, understand or accept the reality of temperament, right, with their child and care for that child well, especially when that child may have a temperament that's so different from the caregivers, or perhaps is particularly challenging for the caregiver? Um, I could go on and tell you stories about that my mother told about my temperament as a baby that just would, make you kind of shake your head at that. But, how can professionals help families when they're dealing with kind of what might be considered, not, I don't want to say mismatch, but do you know what I'm saying?
Mhm. Yeah, we may have heard of that term like goodness of fit, right? And I think once we understand our own temperament, it really helps for us to really think about how we, identify, what our child's temperament is and saying, are we flexible and willing to really say, okay, well, how can I try to not change my temperament, right? But how can I, in that moment, try to match what the child's needs are, right? Because we want to be responsive to their needs in that moment. And so, really trying to think about, well, maybe they want to go outside and get that energy out, and we enjoy sitting down on the couch and maybe, having a cup of coffee. But are we willing to say, take, 15 minutes outside with our kid so they can release that energy and that activity level? And so it's our understanding of what we enjoy and how that, may not be what someone else enjoys. And so I think that's being able to think about the needs of our child before our own needs, which sometimes can be hard, especially after a long day, I know.
Yeah, for sure. I struggle with that with just teenagers. I can't even imagine with small children. Um, So I guess kind of in that same vein, so that's kind of about helping families. But when you're talking in this audience, say many of the professionals in the audience probably are Head Start teachers or child care providers. And so they're caring for multiple children, right? So any pro tips on how you might meet the needs of multiple children and multiple different temperaments, where they are kind of as you're dealing with them simultaneously, right?
Yeah, I think, I think we have the opportunity because we create our schedules, right? For the most part in our classroom and the activities and routines. And so I think with our team members, you know, for each of us to understand our own temperament, and hopefully we have, some matches or some flexibility within and across our temperaments to say, hey, I see you match that level, right, with another child. And what are some ideas, and sharing those ideas with each other based on our understanding of that child's temperament and being able to create in that environment, right, in those activities that are going to be able to reach across the multiple temperaments that we have with kids. And so, it may be that, hey, I like a quiet classroom and I like it, the lights dim and low, but maybe our colleague is like, we need to add a little umph in the room. And so how can we have that balance, right? Giving, opportunities for both, right? Or for many different um, levels of activity within the daily schedule, right? And so it's not like you can't have like the lights on and the kids in the dark all day long. Give them that opportunity for some more active engagement in order to meet that temperament activity level.
Yeah, thank you. We did have a question that came in through the Q&A, and this person's asking how does one match a temperament? When you say that, is there a practical way to kind of explain how a professional would help match the temperament of a child?
I wouldn't say that because like we're not going to change our temperament, right? But I think it's how we engage with them and the opportunities for activities, right, with them. And so if you are, um, just say, like I said before, if you're someone who has a really calm temperament, right, and you have a very high energy level, kiddo, are you willing to provide an active engaging activity during your day? Do you provide opportunities for maybe some wiggle dancing, right, and some music to play, some outdoor running around? That's not to say that you are going to change your temperament, but you're matching what their needs are. And so really thinking about what is the needs of the child and how can we be and create environments responsive to those needs.
Great, thank you. I appreciate that. Um, I think sometimes, when I was parenting little ones, sometimes I would match their temperament, and this probably isn't what you mean by this, but sometimes I would, when they were toddlers, right? They'd be screaming and yelling and having a fit. And so I was like, so I would stop my foot and scream and yell and have my own fit. And while that probably wasn't the best way to match a temperament, it certainly made them stop and look at me like, what is wrong with you?
Yes, you probably was just like, oh wow. They're probably like, yeah, yeah. So I've done that
Uh-huh.
individually with my own kids, but I don't think as a collective, as a group. I mean, it might work,
Yeah.
because you might get attention of all the kids, not just the one that you're trying to match the temperament with, but the entire group may start. But how can you, I think, if you're trying to reset the tone
Mhm.
in the classroom, what is something that you can do, and really thinking about how can you um, capture that child's attention and engage them in an interaction, right, that is going to, if they have really big emotions, you want them to be able to express themselves. So again, being very descriptive of the emotions that they're having and how to help get them to a state where they can have a positive interaction and engagement with you and with their peers around them as well.
Yeah, and helping to provide that vocabulary, for that emotional vocabulary is
Mhm.
really important. Yeah. So in a different, this is kind of the last one that kind of came in a different vein is, there was a comment about in a perfect world, caregivers and teachers could or would move with the children that they care for. But excuse me, this person's seen a lot of turnover, and many of us have seen a lot of turnover, which makes it hard for kids once they form an attachment. So, how can professionals help support children who've seen so much turnover in childcare or in their preschool programs? How can we help those children as they are faced with building new attachments so frequently?
Think for us, if we are the constant and we are consistent, right? And so really being consistent in our care with them, being consistent in our routines, being consistent in, our responses to them. Unfortunately, we, can't control other providers and what direction their lives taking them in. But if we are consistent in how we are responsive to them, and really bringing those who are coming into our programs to work alongside us, share with them the experiences that children are having, what we know about the kids, their temperaments, things maybe that are happening at home, especially with our families who may have, family members who are deployed, right? And are transitioning to new bases, to new environments. That change, right, is going to impact kids. And so really thinking about how we are, how we present ourselves to the kiddos, and we're, establishing our consistency, our routines, and making sure our team members know the importance it is for the little ones that we're caring for, and what their life is like, as being part of military families. And there's, like I said in the beginning, military life is a little bit different, quote unquote, than civilian life. And so it's really, really, really important for us to really think about that, and how we are continuing to be reflective of our practice and our interactions, and thinking about, again, I go back to those pictures and the captions that you're coming up. What would that caption say with your interaction with that child?
Yeah, that's a good way to think about it. Yeah. Um, there is another question that came in too, asking if there was a temperament survey, say, that perhaps a family member, caregiver could take at the beginning of the year to help the providers understand and know their temperament and know kind of where they were. Do you know of any kind of, is there, I mean, I know you could probably Google to find an assessment, but do you know of anything in particular that would help people understand their own temperament in particular?
Um, oh, not right offhand. I see that
Yeah.
someone mentioned one in the chat. Um, I I think if we think about how we would describe ourselves and our response to different situations, it would tune us in maybe to what our temperament is. But really, I think for families trying to describe their own temperament, that is a great question. I don't know why I didn't think of pulling up a tool.
Yeah, no, that's okay. That's okay. You're not expected to have every single answer at the very tip of your tongue. So, well, good. Um, okay, well, thank you again. And we are really, really grateful for all that you shared with us and appreciate your knowledge and expertise. And if there are questions or if others are looking for more information, Dr. Schaefer's information is on the screen. You're welcome to email her.
And I just wanted to thank everyone again, and for joining me. And I wanted to thank OneOp and your team for inviting me. And I look forward to being able to connecting in a future webinar.
Yeah, of course. No, we were really grateful to have you for sure. So as we kind of start to wrap things up, the first thing before we get to the CE credit, which I know everyone is waiting to know about, and I will get to it. But before we do, I want to point out our next webinar on April 18th in our current series, Thriving Together. This webinar is going to weave together foundations of social emotional development during middle childhood, so that 6 to 12-year-old range, and the role of expressive art in nurturing their overall development particularly within the context of transitions, grief, and loss, particularly those that are unexpected. The presenters will focus on the principles, foundations, and evidence base of expressive art approaches. You can check the webinar event page for information on CE credits for the April 18th webinar, and that link is at the bottom of the slide. It's important to understand that this webinar that I'm talking about on April 18th is talking about expressive arts. You do not need to be an art therapist. You do not need to be a therapist of any kind to glean some really great information around how you can use art to help children in this middle childhood range cope with unexpected changes that they might be facing. It's a unique twist on things, and I'm really looking forward to what the presenters will share with us during that webinar. Okay, CE credit. Today's webinar offers several different types of CE credits and a certificate of attendance for general use. To receive either of these items, all participants will need to complete a two-step process that includes an evaluation and a follow-up survey of some kind, depending on the type of credit you're going to need. First, you'll complete the evaluation. After that, you'll see a message where you can select a link for the type of credit you need, and then you'll be directed to another survey or post-test. After you complete the second step, you'll get a certificate in your email within 24 to 48 hours. So if you desire a certificate and you haven't entered an email address, you're not yet done with the two-step process. Some email providers may direct the certificate to a spam folder, so please check your spam folder if you don't get it in 24 to 48 hours after completing it. If it's not there, please email us using the address on the screen. At this point, our live audience can see in the chat a link to the evaluation. You may need to copy and paste that link into a new browser window because it may not be clickable for you, but you could copy it and put it into a browser window. For those who might be watching this on demand, or if you need to come back later to complete the CE process, you'll find the link to the evaluation on the webinar event page. There will be a purple button on the webinar event page, like the one you see on the screen, and you'll click that purple button on the event page and it'll take you to the evaluation. You don't need to enter your email address here. I'm sorry if you misunderstood me. When you complete the evaluation and the post-test, if you get to it and you think you're done and you're like, wait, they didn't ask me for an email, you're not yet done. That's what I meant. Sorry for the confusion. If you get an error message at any point in any of these links that you're trying to access, please read that error message. Sometimes websites are blocked by a user's settings or firewalls. If that's the case, you're going to need to contact your organization's IT department for assistance. If after that you still get an error message, take a screenshot and attach it in an email to us, and we can help you from there. For questions regarding CE credits or anything else about today's presentation, please email our team using the address on the screen and that is being placed in the chat pod right now. And then the last slide for today is just a reminder to be sure to visit us at our website, oneop.org, to explore upcoming events, articles, resources, and more. You can also find us on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, and YouTube. We'll stick around for just a few more moments in case you need to grab any links or information or have other quick CE questions. We thank you for being here. And again, we thank Dr. Schaefer for her expertise, and we look forward to working with her in the future. Hope everyone has a great day.